Now you're welcome back. So Ireland 3-2 winners this evening against Australia at Tallaght Stadium. This is a 7-game run. Losing streak ended. A real morale booster, I guess, ahead of the World Cup qualifiers starting next month. Sweden and Finland to come in October. Will O'Callaghan was watching the game this evening. So, Will, I've been keeping an eye on it here. It looked lively. I mean, 5 goals for starters. So, I mean, it wasn't a stalemate or a grim affair by any means, but it looked like there were lots of chances. Looked like a kind of fast tempo, 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. Plenty of chances at both ends. 4 of them scored in a pretty frantic first half where both teams will feel, Joe, they should have scored more. But Ireland getting the decisive goal 5 minutes after half-time from Louise Quinn, who was named as the player of the game, had a really good performance defensively, particularly when Australia looked to turn the screw a bit in the last 15 minutes or so. Louise Quinn made 2 or 3 very important interceptions, particularly 2 crosses that come in from the right-hand side. And she marshalled the defence brilliantly, particularly when you consider that going into this game, people were talking about Sam Kerr's 100 cap and how many goals she was going to score against the Republic of Ireland in front of 4,000 people at Tallaght Stadium. And she was left a frustrated figure by the end, probably because of the way that Louise Quinn played. I thought Niamh Fahey had a really good game defensively, particularly in that second half too. And, you know, Ireland carried a threat going forward. I was a little bit concerned when I saw the team lineup that once again, Ireland were going with effectively a back 5 where Katie McCabe is back trying to do a lot of work in the left wing back position when Ireland really need to get her into attacking positions to unleash the most of her potential. But she's doing a very important role for the team, attacking deep from the left. Denise O'Sullivan played in a slightly more retreated role, back as more of a kind of a holding midfielder as opposed to playing as a number 10. And Amber Barrett was playing in an unusual position, not part of the front 2, but playing behind them. And yet it all seemed to click to create some chances in the first half, which is what I think would be the most pleasing thing for Vera Pauw. And then second half, it was all about getting the result. As you mentioned, 7 games played since March of 2020. The Republic of Ireland hadn't won under Vera Pauw since the start of the pandemic. Played a lot of teams that were ranked above them during that period and a couple of frustrating defeats, particularly against Iceland in the summer. But to actually hold on and to win the game 3-2 against a side who were ranked 11th in the world, Joe, and a team who got to the last 4 at the Olympics, beating Great Britain on the way to the semi-finals where they lost out to Ireland's next opponent, Sweden. This has to be a big morale booster going into particularly the matches with Sweden and Finland, 4 World Cup qualifiers this side of the end of the year.
Yeah, and Vera Pauw was asked about that afterwards on TV and, you know, the losing streak that is, and she said she was never worried about it, and it was very much, it seems, in so much as you can choose opposition, I suppose, but it was a concerted enough policy to try and give the Irish team game time against the best teams in the world in the hope that they'll grow, I suppose, more quickly and learn more quickly about how you have to play against the best sides in the world. So, in fairness, there is something admirable about that as opposed to going on a 7-match winning streak, which doesn't really bring the team on in any great way against lesser sides.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the men's international team going into the summer where they played Andorra, got a victory, and there wasn't a huge amount to take from the fact that they had beaten Andorra. And similarly, I think if back in the spring, if Stephen Kenny's side had beaten Qatar, people would have still pointed to the fact that when they played better opposition in the Nations League or in the World Cup qualifiers, they were losing those games. Like, I think you can probably break the Pauw era into 2 parts. Very promising at the start, beating the teams they were expected to beat at the first half of that qualifying campaign for the European Championships, and then not getting the results, particularly the one away from home against Ukraine when the pressure was on, and taking a heavy enough defeat against Germany in the last fixture that things were in the melting pot half to 3/4 way through the campaign, and then didn't get the results, and then some poor results in friendly matches subsequently meant that a victory was really badly needed for this team. And like, there's some new players and returning players who are fitting into the system here. Like, it was an extended squad that was called up, and I'm sure Lucy Quinn, who only qualified to play for Ireland a few days ago, the Birmingham striker, will be delighted to have got on the score sheet technically. I think it may well, if we go to a dubious goals committee, go down as an own goal for the Australian goalkeeper, but a well-struck free kick which hit the post, came back and hit the Australian goalkeeper and went in. To have got a goal so early in the game, just 3 minutes into your first international, has to be a big boost. And that's been a question mark over this Irish team too, has been trying to find an attacker who can score the goals, because this Republic of Ireland team have been quite good until they get to the box and then been short when it came to having a goal scorer. You know, Louise Kernan back in the squad, she got on during the second half too. She's playing with Liverpool in the second flight in England currently. But Lucy Quinn just bolsters those options a little bit. And that's why it was intriguing to see that Amber Barrett was playing in a retreated role, because I thought Heather Payne, if Louise Quinn was named player of the game, Heather Payne can feel very unfortunate that she wasn't named player of the game. The work that she got through tonight, Joe, was remarkable. She actually led the line in that second half at times when possession was being lost. She hassled and she harried against the Australian defence on numerous occasions. And that, I think, has to be seen as one of the real positives coming out of this. It's now probably going to be a case for the World Cup qualifiers of who partners Payne up front, as opposed to trying to find maybe two strikers or a lone striker to do that job.
Right, okay. So again, by the way, for anyone tuning in, Will mentioned Lucy Quinn on her debut. She scored a free kick early on, 27 years of age. The brilliant Denise O'Sullivan with the second, although took a huge deflection. To be fair, one of the Australian goals took a wicked deflection as well, so we'll call that quits. And then Louise Quinn, header from a corner, now at Birmingham, of course, after her time in Italy. That's her 12th international goal, which is no mean feat for a centre half. Look, it's silly of us to sit here and say everything's great and everything's perfect. There are kind of areas of concern or areas of areas for improvement. The goalkeeping position, Courtney Brosnan was in goals again this evening. Like, you'd have to chalk the Mary Fowler goal up as a mistake on her part, and maybe, Will, there were one or two other moments. There was a heavy touch when Sam Kerr closed her down, the ball went wide, there was a dropping ball spilled. You couldn't say there was huge security back there in the goalkeeping position this evening. Not that it was a disastrous performance either, to be fair.
No, she made a couple of good saves after the first one. And if you're looking at your goalkeeper, when, let's be fair, she had a howler for the Mary Fowler goal that went in for the equaliser. It was a shot that was right down the middle of the goal, and Brosnan didn't get down well at all and deflected the ball into her own net. And like, that's a routine save which a goalkeeper should be making at international level. And yeah, there was a couple of times that she got caught with the ball at her feet and maybe was lucky that Australia didn't take more advantage of it. And then, like, she made a couple of good saves, but you're thinking that if you're Brosnan coming in for this game, having lost her place to Maloney at the end of the qualifying campaign last time round, and like, Grace Maloney's done nothing wrong since coming in, but Maloney was sick last week, Vera Pauw explained before the game, so Brosnan got a chance to impress ahead of the World Cup qualifiers. She's definitely not going to want to see a replay of that first Australian goal. And Mary Fowler, I thought, Joe, had a really good game. I remember Colin Bell talking about her back in 2017 or 2018 when he was the manager. He was trying to get her to declare for the Republic of Ireland at that time because she was getting ready to play her club football in Europe, and her dad is Irish, as you can guess by the name, and the hope was that she might declare at that point. It's a pity she didn't, because I thought she was the best Australian player on show tonight, was really dangerous, wasn't afraid to get a shot off. As with that goal, it's like you take a chance and the goalkeeper makes a mistake, but she got across the front three for Australia this evening. Powerful runner with the ball at her feet too. One that definitely feels like they got away, even though she was born and grew up in Australia. So understandable that she would declare for the nation of her birth, but a pity we couldn't get her, because that type of player would make a big difference, I think, in the Republic of Ireland setup if she was available to play. But yeah, I think defensively they had to dig in at times, and that's why Louise Quinn is getting player of the game. It's not just because she headed the winner early in the second half of the game. It's because of some of the backs of the wall defending that she had to put in. But Vera Pauw would probably turn around and say to me, the most important thing is that Ireland didn't concede in that last 15-20 minutes when Australia had a lot of the ball. They were up against one of the best strikers in world football in Sam Kerr. They were able to frustrate her for the night and she wasn't able to score. And that defensively is something that they can build on against both Sweden and Finland. Yeah, I'm just watching some of the interviews. Obviously can't hear them, but you're seeing lots of smiles, and you would detect in the body language a real sense of relief. Vera Pauw was, thrilled with the win, all smiles and like lots of fist bumps. This wasn't a team kind of treating this as a friendly. It was, you get the feeling, a pretty important night for them all, because for the first time, I would say, in the build up to this match, definitely in the media, one detected a bit of pressure on Vera Pauw, like the 7-match losing streak, the way that the Euros campaign finished, the second half of it after they'd got themselves in such a great position. Definitely, there was probably a sense we're going into 2 crucial World Cup qualifiers on the back of an 8-match losing streak, and potentially, disappointing performance and or result this evening. And I don't know, like there would have been just a bit of negativity in the mood music around the team itself, especially when everything else is going so well in terms of things like the Sky sponsorship, and the resources now are so much better, and the parity of pay with the men. There would have been a sense of, come on, time to deliver here, and so I think you're seeing a lot of that in the body language tonight with their relief, the smiles. It's a little bit more than just a forgettable friendly win for them. Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because Vera Pauw was speaking to Stephen Doyle a couple of weeks ago when the Sky deal was announced as the shirt sponsor, and it was right on the back of the pay parity for international appearances for the men's and women's national teams. And you've got all this kind of good energy, particularly on the back of the Sky deal. It would have let the air out the balloon slightly if Australia come over and played particularly well against the Republic of Ireland, and say if they'd taken a defeat in Tallaght, you're then facing into a Sweden game where I think very few people would expect Ireland to be beating Sweden. Sweden are going to be one of the top teams in qualifying for the next World Cup, so that's a very difficult game ahead. But you go in with the question marks no longer there about the losing streak, on the back of a morale boosting victory. And there were plenty of newspaper editorials over the last couple of days, and even go back to last weekend, which was, have we maybe been a bit too soft on Vera Pauw along the way, where we thought that was a good qualifying campaign, but ultimately they weren't able to get the job done. And there haven't really been great signs in the friendlies that have been played since. The narrative would have very much stuck on a losing run going back to March of last year. And particularly if they were to lose to Sweden at that point in the first of the qualifiers, you would think that the pressure would definitely be on Vera Pauw at that stage. But she can turn around now and say she's had some returning players coming back into the squad. Like, great to see Claire Shine, who scored a remarkable goal for Glasgow in the Champions League qualifiers a few weeks ago, who has been through so many issues in her own life over the last few years, to be back into the squad again is a big morale booster too. And these players coming back in just adds an extra bit of competition along the way. And some of the injured players who weren't available this time round, like, say, Littlejohn, who would have probably started in midfield, should be back for the game next time round. And there's also a good supply of players now, particularly with Birmingham City creating a mini Irish camp currently, and a lot of Irish players going to Liverpool in the second flight in England, who are now getting regular football at a good level there. And they've been taking a good look at the camps for the Women's National League teams. I'm intrigued to see, Joe, whether the likes of, say, Sarah Rowe, who trained with that home-based squad after she signed with Shelburne, can now push to get a place into the Irish team, or whether she's going to go back to Australia. And Noonan, such a star for the Cork Ladies footballers, has been involved in Republic of Ireland squads too, and gave up ladies football this summer to try and make the senior squad, and has been named in the last couple of squads. Is she going to break through and add an extra bit of competition too? So Vera Pauw is getting a few more options along the way, which I'm sure she's going to welcome as well.
Yeah, I think what added to the pressure and those editorials that you mentioned was the way Northern Ireland dispatched of Ukraine in the qualifiers. It was 4-1 in aggregate. They eased through. They were missing a number of players. Ireland, the Republic, have a population advantage, and players playing at a higher level, really. So suddenly I think it was such a direct comparison, the way Ireland had struggled against Ukraine, hadn't, put themselves in a playoff position, and then Northern Ireland just dispatched of that opposition. So I think that probably added to this sense of, well, hang on here, do we need to re-examine the job Vera Pauw's actually done?
Well, what amplified that too was that Kenny Shields went in pretty late in the journey to become the Northern Ireland women's national team manager too, and he was able to get that group of players together to play at a fairly high octane, fairly high work rate, where they were able to beat Ukraine and watch their playoffs before the European Championships. And Northern Ireland were excellent with, I would say, a lower quality of player across the board than the Republic of Ireland have, which was why it felt even more like a golden opportunity was missed away from home against Ukraine. And I know there was a couple of moments in that game, McCabe hitting the woodwork with the penalty, the bizarre nature of the Onion O'Gorman own goal, which slipped past Brosnan into the net at the time. Like, they're individual errors that happen along the way and bits of bad luck, but you couldn't but look at Northern Ireland and think, right, they've come together with the team who are inferior to the Republic of Ireland on paper, but yet they're able to get the job done in 2 playoffs to make sure that they go to the championships. So yeah, there's no doubt that put pressure along the way. And like, to have missed out on the Europeans to be played in England as well, that would have been a huge boost to go along. And it seemed like after the Republic of Ireland started so well, Joe, that all they had to do realistically was pick up 3 points against Ukraine, and they could have automatically qualified for the finals. And to have missed out on that was a real killer, I'd agree.
Yeah. So that brings us nicely to where we are now. Friendly this evening, really good win, as you said, against the 11th best team in the world. Ireland are ranked 33rd. And from next month, the World Cup qualifiers get underway for World Cup 2023. Sweden, who should top the group realistically, and Finland. The other teams in the group, if people didn't catch it, Slovakia and Georgia. Basically, Sweden likely winners, and Ireland fighting it out for that playoff spot. And you would say, like, very, very doable, very, very much within their grasp.
Yeah, look, I mean, the equation is fairly simple. You take the two bottom teams in the group with Georgia and Slovakia, you'd be expected to win the games home and away against them if you're going to finish in second place in this group. Anything picked up against Sweden would be a bonus. Now, Australia were missing a few players, but still a lot of their women's league players from England, particularly playing tonight. So it was still a strong 11 that they had out. But they lost out 1-0 to Sweden in the Olympics just a couple of months ago in Tokyo. So that might just give you an idea of how close Australia can be to Sweden on their day. And the Republic of Ireland have beaten Australia. So this is the perfect fixture in so many ways to get ready for the Sweden fixture. But yeah, Joe, you'd expect that Sweden are going to take this group, and they won't probably sweep it, but they'll be a bit like Germany in our European group, where they'll be expected to win all the fixtures that they play. The Republic of Ireland will be hoping that there's maybe a few draws along the way between the two Nordic rivals in Sweden and Finland, because Finland are likely to be the Republic of Ireland's main threat when it comes to these qualifiers. And, you know, if they can turn Tallaght Stadium into a little bit of a fortress, and again, it was good to see 4,000 supporters there tonight, where the team has been playing without supporters for so long, and many of them, you know, young fans who are going in. Like I was chatting to our own colleague Phil Egan, who was going along and bringing some of his niece and nephews along to watch the game tonight. Great to see them get exposure to watch some international football along the way. And if Ireland can get some good results at home and be sticky and difficult to beat like they were in the second half of the game, there's no reason to think that this Republic of Ireland team can't go on and give it a good shot at qualifying. But yeah, I mean, Sweden is difficult. And what a way to have to start to play Sweden in the first qualifier. Yeah. That's going to be a real test of where Ireland really are.
Yeah, the Tallaght Stadium thing is working out quite well. Bit of a rhythm there, a bit of familiarity, good sized stadium for, you know, good atmosphere and fans.
Great surface, yeah. Fantastic place to play.
Yeah, it's kind of ideal for where the team is at the moment. So, look, we'll be talking about this, I'm sure, plenty next month. But a win for Ireland this evening ends that 7-match losing streak, 3-2 win against Australia, and we'll reconvene next October for Sweden and Finland.